Hey, YouTube. No, nah. Don't answer that. I know the answer. Uh, if you're here, you're looking for a video. And if you're here looking for a video, you're probably looking for a video about Star Trek and or gaming. Or in this case, gaming in Star Trek. So, you come to the right place. That is what we do here. Uh, Welcome. My name is Patrick. Before we get started, I'd like to ask you to like the video, subscribe to the channel, leave some comments below, and above all, tell your friends, invite them over, let them watch this as well. Last video I did, we used the newly released Klingon Empire Core Rulebook for Star Trek Adventures, and we created a great house, the House of Sorval. And in that video I mentioned, I might just generate Sorval's stats. And well, I think I'm going to go ahead and do the character generation because there are a few minor differences here and there between the Klingon core book and the Starfleet core book. I'm not going to generate Sorval. I am going to create a player character of my very own. Normally I would create this character as an NPC, but one of my players has volunteered to actually, act as a guest director and run an episode or two, so that I can actually play. So this guy, instead of being an NPC, is going to be my PC. I'm so happy. Sorry about that. I GM a lot. I don't get to play very often. I'm playing an online game, but actually playing with people, rolling dice. Well, we're not doing that a whole lot right now either, but we're thinking about it. All right. So let's before we go on, let's take a quick look at the character sheet in the core book. Right now it's on page 379, but don't get used to that. I'm told the page counts have changed because they're adding 16 extra pages of trimmed content and art. One thing I like about the sheet in the Klingon book versus the sheet in the Starfleet book is it's two-sided and it's got room to keep track of life path events from character generation, which the Starfleet version of the sheet lacks. It's also got a place to put your house information if you're using the great houses. And spoiler alert, we are today going to use that. But it's got all the basic information. Obviously a Klingon theme to the sheet, but that is what that looks like. Now the game we're going to be playing, it's in my campaign. It's what they refer to as a Lost Era. It's set in 2295, just a little after Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country, and the opening events of Star Trek Generations. It's called The Razor's Edge. It is set at Starbase 24, the Razor's Edge station. Used to be on the edge of the Klingon neutral zone until it basically stopped existing. The mission on the base, now that the Klingons and the humans, the Federation, are cooperating after the unprecedented signing of the Khitomer Accords, is to either find a new homeworld for the Klingons or repair the ecological damage to Kronos that the explosion at Praxis caused. We've been running for 4 or 5 episodes under our belts. Everybody seems to be enjoying it. Things are fixing to get kind of serious, but I might get to play, so I'll take it. Now, while the existing supplements, the division books, the quadrant books are all completely 100% compatible with the Klingon core book, for purposes of this demonstration, we're going to stay strictly within the pages of the Klingon core book PDF. A reminder, sometimes you'll see a little bit of lag as I try to move things. It's a preview PDF right now. There will be more content added to it, and it will be optimized once the version to print is finalized. Until then, you gotta kind of put up with lag. It's available for the hard copy is available for pre-order right now on Modiphius's website. I'll provide a link down below. You can also buy just the PDF. You can buy that either at Modiphius or at DriveThru. If you pre-order the hardback book, you get immediate access to the PDF. They give the PDF away with the book, which is a fantastic deal. Let's dive into this. Let's build a character. So here we are. In the preview PDF, it is page 96, Life Path Character Creation. And there's, it's got the basic overview. Moving over to page 97, it's got a beautiful, easy to follow flow chart. One of the things we really like about the Klingon core book is the cleaning up of the rules. Nice, clear examples and flow. So let's get back to this. The first step, step 1, species. It's a lot easier in the Klingon book because these are your choices. You've got Klingons and you've got the COG. Pardon my miserably pronounced Klingon. Because you can play this in any era, and during a sizable era, about 120 years or so, from about 2155 into the early 2270s, a lot of Klingons looked like that because of events that occurred in the series Enterprise. If you're playing a 22nd or 23rd century campaign, you can choose either one of these. By the mid-2270s, they've corrected the problem that caused it, and smooth-headed Klingons become bumpy-headed Klingons by 2275 or so at the latest. Since our game is set in 2295, I clearly am going to be playing a Klingon. Well, I'd be playing a Klingon anyway, wouldn't I? Anyway, choosing a species, just like in the Starfleet book, gives you a species trait. Klingon, which is explained there. Let me zoom in on that just because. Trait, Klingon. You get +1 to these 3 attributes. These are the same attributes you find in the Klingon player character species in the Beta Quadrant source book, but for obvious reasons, repeated here. They are different, by the way, for smooth-headed Klingons. because they're a lot closer to humans in many regards, so they have a different set of attribute modifiers. You get access to talents unique to the species. Since I'm going to be playing a bumpy-headed, full-on Klingon, I have to take the talent Brochlul, which you can find on page 119 at the moment. But you have to take this if you're playing a bumpy-headed Klingon. If you're playing a smooth-headed Klingon, this is optional. But not for me. There are a couple of unique talents for the smooth-headed Klingons. We'll get back to this in just a minute. I have used this spreadsheet for about 4 years now, since we were doing play testing when Star Trek Adventures was first being written, and I just put it together to help me keep track of what I was doing during each step. It figures stress for me. If you're a human, you have the resolute talent. It figures higher stress. A variety of attacks with a variety of weapons. It will calculate this as we go. Makes keeping track of stats a lot easier. I will put a link to this spreadsheet in the description for the video. So if you feel like you need this spreadsheet, if it'd make your life a little easier, I'll have a copy available for you to download. Now, since the Klingon character sheet does not as yet have a form-fillable version, I'm sure this will be resolved sometime once they get the thing finalized. I am just going to use a Word document. I've got a template that I use for the PCs in my game, but it's a quick and easy thing. It's got most of the stuff that I need already formatted for me. Let's see here. This is normally where I would put a Starfleet insignia. Even though the game is set in 2295 and everybody's using the star insignia, I also use the science and the support operations badge from the original series, just because I think they look cool. But since we're making a Klingon character, I'm going to do that. And just because I want it to kind of look cool, we will make it red. And since we're playing a Klingon, I'm going to go ahead and put his trait here, Klingon. Boom. Let's get rid of this stuff. Kind of know where everything goes now. Since we're kind of jumping ahead of things, because that's what I do. Usually I save the name till the finishing touches, but I'm going to go ahead and name this guy right now. This is going to be Cord, son of Kren. Hey, I got all the capitalization. Boom. Okay, great. He is of the House of Sorval. He's a Klingon science officer. He's got the rank of lieutenant. So I guess we can come down here, and while we're doing this, I don't really have a spot for ranks and stuff, but I can. Lieutenant, really? There we go. Lieutenant, Klingon Defense Force. He is being assigned to Starbase 24 as kind of a designated observer. Since he's a science officer, he goes out on a lot of the missions with the various ships that are searching for either new technologies or new planets for the restoration of Kronos. So let's put his assignment, Observer. How do we want to put this? Observer on Federation Star Base 24. That works. Since we are playing a Klingon, one of the things we have to take is the talent Brock Lul. So let's go ahead and write that in there. Brock Lul. And Klingon Empire Core Rulebook page. Right now it's on page 119. I have a feeling that's going to change, but for the time being, whoops, come back here. We are technically not going to be using step 2, but I want to touch on it anyway. It's essentially the same thing that you get in the Starfleet book with certain Klingon differences. You know, you could grow up on Kronos or one of the core worlds. Basically the same theory, each one giving you different benefits. The Great House rules replace steps 2 and step 3, but with step 3 you get a value, which is completely your choice. You get +1 to 1 attribute and +1 to 1 discipline, and this is going to differ according to the environment that you choose. You'll notice that you get a certain choice of attributes. You get a certain choice among the disciplines. You get to choose one of each of those, raise it by +1. Now, while Cord is from the House of Sorval, he was actually born on Kronos, which would normally give him a point in one of these 3 attributes and one of these 3 disciplines. Then we get to step 3. In the Klingon book, this is referred to as Caste. It would be called Upbringing in the Starfleet Core Rulebook. Again, we're not going to touch on this deeply here because we're going a slightly different route. But here are your castes. What happens if you accept? What happens if you rebel? The disciplines that you have access to. In step 3, you get a +2 to 1 attribute, +1 to a second. You get +1 to a single discipline. You get a focus, and you get a talent. I would like to address your attention to page 100. Currently, glory to you and your house. The Great House Rules, as I said before, replace steps 2 and 3. So we're going to go that route because we have it. We created a house the other day, and well, we may as well see how this works. Now here is the House of Sorval. We generated it the other day. I cleaned it up some, made it a little bit prettier so that I could hand it out if I had to. You'll notice that once all is said and done, it gives you everything within these 3 entries here: the status, the legacy, and the disposition. It gives you everything that environment and caste would have given you, just a slightly different direction, slightly more focused in some cases. All right. Now, since I haven't really adjusted the spreadsheet here to use the house rules, I'm just going to put the house legacy and status stuff on step 2 and the house disposition stuff on step 3, just because it neatly organizes things. Let's see, a little background. Cord is the grandson of Sorval. He is the son of Kren, one of Sorval's many sons. Sorval has been alive for a very long time. He's in game. He's like coming near the end of life. He's in his 170s. While not unheard of, it's very rare for a Klingon to reach that kind of old age. But he's had a few wives, a few lovers. He's got a lot of sons. He's got a lot of grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and so forth. Kren, while not his oldest son, is his designated heir. Kren is Kord's father. So that's how that works out. Anyway, he was born on Kronos, grew up in the house's compound, their great hall. His father, Kren, is a science officer in the Klingon Defense Force. His mother is a physician on Kronos. She did some time in the military, but now she's a civilian doctor. She is working relief efforts there after the explosion at Praxis. Hey, I'm generating a character. I've got to come up with backstory. The House of Sorval. The house status gives us a +1 to fitness and to reason. Whoops. Reason. There we go. That status also gives us a value. And here I flipped over. Since the House of Sorval is new and rising, here are some of the sample values. You can make anything you want as a value. They're completely your choice. One of them kind of catches my eye, because the character Sorval is not afraid to get his hands dirty, and I think this fits the house ethos quite well. Let's see, let's copy that. I'll just paste that in. But I'll use that as his value from this stage of character generation. Admire those with dirt under their fingernails. So let's go over here to values and paste that in. Admire those with dirt under their fingernails. And then let's save this. Boom. Alright, so the House Legacy of Scientists gives us a +1 to science. It's going to give us a focus, and it's going to give us a talent. We'll get to the talents in a moment. So let's put a +1 into our science. For the focus, that's, something scientific seems appropriate. He is from a house noted for its scientists. He's a science officer himself. Given the Razor's Edge mission of finding a new Klingon homeworld, something in the planetary sciences also seems appropriate. So let's go with geology. That's pretty planet-oriented. Let's take a look at talents. Now, talents themselves, most lists starts on what is currently page 118. However, the house rules also provide a couple of talents that can only be gained through the house. Now, the House of Sorval is noted for scientists. That's its legacy. And here are the talents that you get from that legacy. You get a tradition of discovery or taught by pain. Now, a tradition of discovery kind of looks interesting to me. If you spend momentum on obtain information, you get a bonus D20 for free on the next task you attempt related to that momentum spend. Sounds pretty cool to me. So let's get down to talents, and let's put that in there. A tradition of discovery. Which is on Klingon Empire, page 138. And we'll have to go back and change that later when the book comes out. Let's be consistent. There we go. And saved. Yay. Okay, the house disposition. Boosh. I don't know why I go into that tone of voice when I do Klingon, but I do. Boosh. Thoughtful and introspective. What that gives you is +1 control and +1 reason and +1 to a discipline of your choice out of any of the 6. Alright. So, the house gives us +1 to control and +1 to reason. Also gives us a discipline of our choice. His mother is a physician, and he grew up with her and the houses complex on Kronos. We'll give him a 1+1 boost there. Oh, almost forgot. Your house is also a trait. And we almost forgot to write that down. So Klingon, House of Sorval. But that is the house rules in action in character generation. Pretty simple and straightforward. Takes a few minutes to generate a house. Anybody can use, and then you can easily plug that in. Back to the core book we go. On page 105 is the biggest single step in character generation. Training. This would be Starfleet Academy in the original core rule book. Again, you got this nice table here outlining everything that happens during this phase. Everybody winds up getting the same amount of boosts entered. It's just a matter of what goes where. Training gives you a value. It gives you 3 points to spend on 2 or 3 attributes. So you'll either have a +2 to one and a +1 to another, or a +1 to 3. Gives you +2 to a single discipline, +1 to 2 other disciplines. It's going to give you 3 focuses and a talent. So it's time to figure out what Cord is going to do with his life. Now, the tracks are kind of different in the Klingon book because it's a lot less stratified. You've got 4 choices instead of 6. But some of those offer a lot of variation within them. Now, science officers fall under the technical officer training track. So that is the road that we are about to go down. So let's take a look at what we're going to do here. You get 3 points towards attributes, which can be +1 to 3 or +2 to 1 and +1 to another. I think I'm going to do +2 and +1. So we're in step 4. Cord's a bright boy, but I'm thinking he's also headstrong and willing to run where angels fear to tread. So I'm going to give him +2 to daring. They do teach him to think about things in his house and to not necessarily, just because you're willing to jump in where angels fear to tread doesn't mean you're going to act on it. We're going to increase his insight by 1. Just like in Starfleet, you have to choose a major. Technical officers get 4 of the 6 disciplines fall under the domain of the technical officer. Con, engineering, science, and medicine are all considered technical officers. And I pretty much know that Cord is going to be a science officer. So, going to take a +2 in science. Now, 1 point has to go to another one of the technical disciplines. In this case, let's give him a point in engineering, because it's good to be able to fix things, especially if you're science has broken it, or if, you know, your fighting and daring has broken it, it's good to be able to fix it. The last point can go in any discipline that you haven't already committed something to. He doesn't have pretensions to command, but some command training has never hurt anybody. Now he's going to get a second value. House of Sorval. It's small. They're constantly looking over their shoulder because they're, you know, small and they're new. So you learn as you go to kind of keep your eye on your back, and also to take care of family, whether it's blood or adopted. And Klingon training only stood to emphasize that. So he's going to get the value watch your brother's back. He gets 3 focuses during his time in training. At least one of them has to connect with his major department, science, meteorology. He's well suited to the Razor's Edge mission. Let's see. Sensor operations is always a good thing for a science officer to... God. I know how to type. You couldn't tell by looking at this, but I know how to type. And sensor operations, good thing for science officers to have, as well as a knowledge of computers. Cord is a fellow nerd. Also gets a talent in training. Given his high daring and his kind of headstrong, rushing in sort of nature, he's probably not one to hold back on feeding the GM some threat. So we'll have him bold, and since he's a science officer, we'll give him bold science. That is on page 118. Save. We put an awful lot of work into this guy for it to suddenly disappear. Step 5, career. This is where you determine whether you're, in the case of the Klingon Rulebook, a young warrior, an experienced warrior, or a veteran warrior. I am going to say that Cord is experienced. This gets you a value and a talent. The advantage with experienced is that the talent you get is your choice. If you were to choose young warrior, you are required to take the untapped potential talent. If you play a veteran warrior, you are required to take the veteran talent. Neither one of them is shabby, but it kind of, you know, forces you to look at things in a particular way. I'm going with experience. I'll be able to choose that on my own. Alright, he gets a value. As a scientist and growing up in his house, he knows that knowledge and information are incredibly important. So we're going to just codify that into his character sheet, and we're going to save that right now. And then since we're not limited by experience for his talent, we are going to go with computer stop that. No one asked you to do that. Computer expertise, which is on page 121. And that's it for his talents. Which brings us to step 6, career events. They also come with a very clear table showing you everything you get. Some of them offer relevant traits to go with it. Some of them have specials. A couple of these, if you wind up playing a laborer or an enlisted warrior, you can find yourself field commissioned to an officer. Very Traveler-esque, except you can't die in Star Trek Adventures character generation. I've tried. Just doesn't happen. Now, you can go through and hand pick the career events that you want to use, but you can also randomize it. I've almost never done this, but I have in my hand 20-sided die. And I think I'm actually going to randomize this just for entertainment value. Now, what this step in character generation gives you is 2 points for attributes, 1 per event, 2 points in disciplines, again, 1 per event, and each event gives you 1 focus, so you'll wind up with a total of 2 during this step. So, rolling the dice. 13. Challenged a superior. Let's go look at that. I love this piece of art. Even wounded, they're fighting. It's great. Challenged a superior. Placed in a situation where you had to choose between a trusted superior and your own honor. Okay, so for backstory purposes, and that's what this particular step, these events, they're great for coming up with backstory ideas. So what have we got here? Early in his career, let's say Cord challenged a senior science officer on his ship because he was falsifying reports to the ship's captain. He was trying to enrich his own house, placing that house above the Empire's interests. Cord emerged victorious and wound up taking the disgraced and deceased officer's place. Alrighty, so in game terms, I got him a +1 to his reason, and because there's a meeting with the captain, he wound up learning a little bit about legal procedures, which gets him a point in con. It also got him a focus in blades, because he suddenly had to learn how to use that Daktag. Fortunately, he paid attention as a youngster. Headstrong, not stupid. Alright, back to the table. And rolling the die. One more time. Let's see what we come up with. No, don't fall off the table. Got an ace. Ship destroyed. Ooh, well, that sucks. Ship you were serving on was lost, destroyed. During a mission, you were one of the few who survived. Alright, so what were they doing? Let's see here. Okay. Cord and one of his fellow science officers were investigating a derelict ship to see if it had anything of value to the Empire, when their own ship was ambushed by a cloaked Romulan. Yeah, we'll go with that. Cloaked Romulan ship. The two vessels duked it out, and while they were doing that, they sent a boarding party onto the derelict to dispatch the Klingons they found there. Their ship was destroyed, but the Romulan boarding party, kind of came out on the short end of that stick, because even Klingon scientists are much more formidable than mere Romulan soldiers. Alright, in game terms, what ship destroyed gets you is, oh, like he needs it, more daring. And it gives him a boost to his security, because, well, he had to fight those Romulans. It also gives him a focus in extra vehicular activity, because he had to wear a spacesuit working that derelict. Okay, I edited out the part where I sorted those, but there are all 6 of his focuses. And now we enter finishing touches, where we finally get everything tied together. It's the last chance to make sure it's customized to our liking. So far, I'm liking what I see. You get one last value. You get +1 to 2 different attributes. You get +1 to 2 different disciplines. And somehow you get another talent. I wonder where I messed up. Oh, I see where I messed up. I jumped the gun way back at step 1. You get access to talents, but you don't actually get a talent at that step. It just tells you that you have access and that you have to take Brock Lul. So at step 3, or in the house, I should have taken Brock Lul and then moved everything down 1. That's my mistake. I'm not going back and re-recording this whole thing, however, so I'm just going to point out where I made the mistake and hope that you're following along. This is where Brock Lul would have happened. This is where a tradition of discovery would have happened. This would have been bold science. And then here is where computer expertise would have come in, here in step 7. My error. I just skipped ahead because I apparently knew what was coming and was impatient. So, again, you get 1 value, plus 1 to 2 different attributes, plus 1 to 2 different disciplines, and a talent. We've already done the talent because we jumped ahead. Sorry about that. So let's jump in here. Now, no attribute can go higher than 12. No discipline can go higher than 5. When all is said and done, you should have 54 here. Oh, I really messed up. I really jumped the gun. See, this tells you what you should wind up. You should have 56 when all is done here, and you should have 16 here. But, like a bonehead, I did not put my species modifiers. You see now why I use things to help me keep track? I'm a doofus. So, the Klingon species attribute bonuses are control, fitness, and presence. And now we're where we should be, 54 out of 56. All right, so let's raise his control and his insight. And see, this tells us that everything adds up. Now, it's possible with certain combinations of the career events and environments in Caste, especially if you randomize, if you have a plan, it's easy to avoid, but you can wind up with numbers that are greater than would normally be allowed. For example, if you wind up with a 13 and something, this spreadsheet will tell you that something is wrong. But here are the attributes. The disciplines, I'm going to go with another point in engineering because it's, again, good to be able to fix things. And I'm going to go with another point in security because he's a Klingon and that's the fighting discipline is security. So that comes out right. You have 16 total points in disciplines. You have 56 total points in attributes. It does the same thing down here if you have too much in a discipline. It'll red flag it. If he had been a young warrior with the untapped potential talent, I'd check that. He'd still check out, but his maximums become 5s and 11s. But he's not. I suppose he could be if we wanted him to be, but I'm not going back and fixing all that. But this is the stage where if it does go, if something has gone over, if previous steps had taken things too far, you just adjust in step 7 and get everything to where they need to be. You can't have anything higher than 12. You can only have 1 12. We're clearly not in any danger there. Your disciplines max out at 5. You can only have 1 5. Again, we're not in danger there. I could, take that point out of security and put it in science if I wanted him a little more sciencey, or I could take it out of the engineering and make him a little more sciencey. But I kind of like where he is right now, so we're going to leave that alone. Alright, moving into the character sheet. He gets a new value, his 4th. And we're going to kind of play to his headstrong nature. If all else fails, improvise. Something he is not afraid to fall back on. Yeah, we'll go with that. No, I'm changing my mind. I'm not going to give him computer expertise. We're going to give him studious. He is constantly asking questions, and we should at least let that count for something. So that's actually on page 119. So this is his list of talents. A tradition of discovery, bold science, Brocklul, and studious. Now, we transfer over his stats. Ten, 9, 9, 8, and 10. 2, 2, 3, 3, 4, 2. His role is science officer. Oh wait, let me get the page reference for that. Just because that's good to know. Science officer's on page 116 at the moment. No, wait, 16. Learn to type. Duh. All right. Stress. Resistance. The various attacks. Let's do this real fast. Everybody's going to have an unarmed strike. He's a Klingon. We can probably keep the Batleth as an escalation, because even Klingons have to pay the GM threat if they start going off the rails. So let's bold that. He's going to carry a Dachtag and a Disruptor Pistol. I have all these things in here. He's not going to carry a Phaser Type 2, so let's just get rid of that. But a Disruptor Rifle as escalation. Boom, there we go. Okay, so there are his attacks. Let's get... You know, that's a Starfleet Delta. I'm a proud Klingon warrior. This will not stand. Now let's get into the right font. There we go. That extra space, I'm not sure how I got there. Okay, now let's change those values because those are going to be different because of what his stats might be. His unarmed strike is actually going to be a 4. Alright. If he gets into it and he decides to swing a batleth. No, well, I may have done this right anyway. He's got a 6. Dachtag. 4. Disruptor pistol 6. Disruptor rifle 7. I don't have to change any numbers. It's a Christmas miracle in late July. And his stress is a 12. So 12. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. There we go. Now, Klingon uniforms were armor. So he gets +1 resistance because of his armor. All right. And that's it. Normally I'd record starting equipment, but I don't really have a place on here right now, and that's just going to be his uniform, his Dachtag and a communicator anyway. He'll generally go out with a tricorder as well, but guys, I think Cord, son of a Kren, is done. There we are. Guys, thank you so much for stopping by and spending however long this thing turns out to be after editing. It's been a long night of me recording it, I gotta tell you. But thanks for coming by. Again, like the video, subscribe to the channel, tell your friends, leave me a comment on what you might want me to do next. I've got a couple of things that people have asked for. If you place any value at all on what I've done, I do take tips. My virtual tip jars are going to be listed in the description. I've also got a little t-shirt shop if you want to buy some t-shirts. I'm going to have some Klingon patterns going up soon. Guys, thank you so much for coming in. Thank you for spending some time with me this evening generating this character. I will see you again next time. Until then, Qapla'.